Just to talk a little bit about Mexico before I move into what I was talking about. I don't think a lot of people recognize the importance, but by 2042, it seems like a long ways away, that's not that far away, Mexico's GDP will be higher than Germany's. And I think we all see Germany right now as an economic powerhouse. Mexico's economy will have a greater GDP than that. At that point, you won't see people migrating into the United States for work. You might see the other way around. And we're starting to see the change in the conversation right now between Mexico City and Washington, D.C., where now Mexico City is all of a sudden taking a larger role in guiding that conversation, instead of us standing up as big brother saying we're going to come down and solve your problems. Unemployment is way down in Mexico. Their economy is starting to explode. It's faster than any other country in Latin America. And when you read about Latin America, they always talk about Brazil and Argentina and those economies. Mexico's is surpassing them. And they have a very skilled workforce in the mega region that Christina was talking about. More engineers are being produced there than we're producing here. So I think the future's really bright for the mega region and for San Diego, Tijuana together. The other reason it's so important is we have intertwined economies. Every year, people from Baja California spend $6 billion in San Diego County. They spend that coming across, buying goods and services, going to restaurants, doing all those things. We only spend about $1 billion to $2 billion going south, though, because of the border issues. The time it takes to cross, the fact that people are frightened about Mexico City or Mexico, even though the crime rate and the homicide rate in Tijuana and much of Mexico is less than it is in Detroit, is less than it is in Washington, D.C., less than it is in New Orleans. The State Department didn't tell you that when they put a warning on their website that says don't go to Mexico. They should be putting that warning on saying don't go to Detroit. If we were to be intellectually honest, that's exactly what we'd be doing. So there's going to be a change in that relationship that I think is going to be fascinating to watch. And that does create a middle class. And you're seeing the middle class because Walmart's down there, Costco's down there, Target's down there, a lot of middle class institutions that cater to the middle class. And the rapidly growing middle class is growing in Mexico right now. So we know that things are going well. And Christina's mega region has done quite a bit for that. I'm really excited to be part of the San Diego Chamber of Commerce. It's been an organization that's embedded in the history of San Diego. If you look back to 1915, the Chamber of Commerce led the effort to have the California-Panama Exposition in San Diego. At that time, San Diego only had 40,000 citizens. So we're about the size, literally, of La Mesa. Smallest city in history to hold an exposition like that. But city leaders got together, spearheaded by the Chamber, that said, we can do this. We can draw huge tourism. We can show off Balboa Park. Exactly what they did. Drew 4 million visitors from around the world into San Diego over a 2-year period to see that exposition, and that's really grown from there. The Chamber of Commerce led the bond drive to build Mission Bay in the 1950s. Mission Bay was in mud flats. As some of you know, some of you may have grown up in San Diego. Back around that time, there was not a beautiful bay there with beautiful parks and all of that, simply mud, and the Chamber led the drive to do that. The Chamber also was a very vital participant in establishing UCSD. UCSD was given land by the City of San Diego to develop that institution, and the Chamber of Commerce helped raise the money to start building that university that has literally put us on the map now and is an economic driver in this mega region with the research that it produces. We also helped to bring the Super Bowls here, and there have been several of them that were brought here, and the Chamber also helped to make the America's Cups come here in the 90s and actually helped to produce those events. So the Chamber's been intertwined in a lot of the business development, jobs development in San Diego for a long time. Today we're working with 2 other partners. I shouldn't say 2 other partners. We're working with a lot of partners, but we have 2 or 3 primary partners that we're working with collaboratively, working very hard. These are organizations I think that probably used to compete, and now we have started forming an alliance where we represent jobs growth in San Diego. And those partnerships really revolve around the fact that EDC, the Economic Development Corporation that spawned the mega region, along with a lot of other players, Connect, which handles the innovation economy out of UCSD and San Diego State University, and entrepreneurs from all over, have literally come together to work on 3 traded economies, and I think that that's up somewhere. Dwayne Roth from Connect came up with the 3 traded economies. I'm sorry, that's on the bad screen. But what the 3 traded economies really mean is that we have 3 main drivers in San Diego right now that produce about 480,000 jobs. Not a huge number compared to the 1.25 million jobs we have in San Diego, but each of those 480,000 jobs affect 2.5 more jobs created within the county with the economic driving that those things do. So we have the 3 traded economies of the military defense, a huge number in San Diego, about 11% of the jobs directly. However, if you really look at what the military does in San Diego, 1 in 4 jobs is related to the military in San Diego, and about $32 billion to the gross product, domestic product of the region. The other one is the, looking up there.
It's convention services.
Convention tourism, that's about 170,000 jobs, I believe. And that is one that also drives San Diego. People always think of low-wage jobs when you think about that, but also think about the fact that all those jobs are synergistic in a way, really revolving around a convention center, revolving around our tourism industry, revolving around a lot of small business, which the Chamber is heavily involved in. So the convention center right now creates about 12,000 full-time jobs. Many of those are small business jobs that service the conventions that come in. Those are the florists, those are the restaurants, those are the caterers, those are the people that rent the equipment, that do all of those sorts of things, along with the people who set those up. The convention center expansion that we've been talking about will produce about another 7,000 full-time jobs. And then it becomes one of the largest contiguous space, it becomes the largest contiguous space convention center on the west coast of North America. At that point, we have a competitive advantage over almost every place in the United States except perhaps New York and Las Vegas, because people come to San Diego. And let me tell you why that's important and why it ties into what happens at EDC, why it ties into what happens with the innovation economy. Every time there's a convention, a high-end convention in San Diego, you get CEOs from companies all over the world who come into San Diego to go to a convention. And some of those people are pretty favorably impressed with what they see out the window of their hotel. They look out, they see a bay. They find perfect weather when they get here, very unlike where they might have come from. And some of those CEOs decide, I'd rather live in San Diego. And they bring a company with them, and it may be a small company, but that's one that starts to build the scale in the clusters that we have. So all these things interlink. And then finally we have the innovation economy, which is all the entrepreneurs, the life sciences, the biotech, the high tech, the wireless, analytics. Analytics, we're the hub of analytics in the United States, big data. More analytics companies in our space than anywhere else. All of those are clusters that are synergistic in that they work together collaboratively to build that infrastructure and to help each other out so that they can attract more engineers, more scientists from around the world. Because when you have clusters, you find that they all want to be there. Companies want to be there, engineers want to be there. And for an engineer, it's simply as simple as saying, if the company that I'm going to work for goes under, then there are a lot of other companies there that need engineers. And that's the type of clustering that creates a lot of job opportunities in San Diego. So EDC is working primarily with the military defense industry and job growth by attracting new companies and retaining companies. The Connect works primarily on the innovation economy, and the Chamber is working on border infrastructure, and we're also working on the tourism industry and getting the convention center built and making sure that we have a robust tourist economy. And we've kind of put those lanes out, they call them running lanes. We work collaboratively on all these things together because they all intersect at some point. So the Cali Baja, the mega region, is directly affected by the border infrastructure, which we're working on. with our Mexico Business Center and with our Smart Border Coalition. They're in partnership with the Cali Baja region because all those things are intertwined, and we work together on each of those issues. Local economy, you see up there, produces about 772,000 jobs, but that means those are jobs that support business in the San Diego region, which means you're not apt to grow a lot because they're going to support what's here, unlike the other jobs that drive 2.5 new jobs for every job that's created there. And that's the reason these three traded economies are so important. The reason we're working together, we're pooling resources. We're affected a lot by external problems. Federal government affects us dramatically. So when they talk about sequestration, people say, well, San Diego's got the military here, we're going to be facing the Pacific Rim, it's where we're going to grow. That still cuts about 10% off their budgets, and they start making budget cuts, and that means jobs in the San Diego region. It also means the border infrastructure is tied up because they've got to take furloughs, and these are Customs and Border Patrol people who monitor those flows of traffic coming in. So what we have done together is Connect has a full-time lobbyist in Washington, D.C. now to talk to the California delegation, all 52, which are never together. California is one of the few states in the union that does not have a delegation that meets together frequently and supports California. They're fractured by politics, they're fractured by geography. You think about California, we're 1,100 miles long in a diverse geography, diverse ideas, diverse cities, very different than almost any other state in the union. And for that reason, Connect is working at connecting all those delegations to let them know how important it is that we work together. We are working together with funding from Connect, funding from EDC, funding from the Chamber, and funding from the Competitiveness Council, which is kind of an overarching umbrella, to put another lobbyist in D.C. To work on those same issues, to really make sure that we're working strongly on the military issues and the sequestration, to make sure we're working on the tourism and the border infrastructure, to make sure we're working on the innovation economy, but also creating a business environment that invites people to come to the San Diego region, the Mexico region, to work together collaboratively. We've also pooled our resources so that the Chamber will hire, along with the other two, we'll all work together on this, but we'll hire representation in Sacramento. And when you want to put threats up, Sacramento is the greatest threat to our economy of anything that we can think of. And that's the reason we need an effective voice there, because it's all about jobs in the end.
What do you mean by that when you say greatest threat?
Well, we have the highest taxes in the United States. We have the highest workers' comp rates in the United States. We have the highest ratio of regulation of any place in the United States. I go out to business every single day to talk about job creation, to talk about what they're doing. And the governor's right, nobody's leaving California because we have the highest tax rate. No corporations are leaving, no business isn't leaving, but they're not expanding here. So every single business that I've been out to visit of any size has said, we're not leaving, but we're building manufacturing facilities in Arizona. We're not leaving, but we're putting our call center in Texas. We're not leaving, but we're putting our accounting functions in Tijuana. Because all of this now can be done remotely, and nobody is building expansions in the United States or in California specifically. The second part of it is every one of these companies that's in the high tech, any of those types of fields, have to attract engineers or you can't live. We don't produce enough locally. When they're trying to attract from across the country, they all pay the same. So whether you're in Chicago, whether you're in Iowa, whether you're in New Orleans, an engineer's paid basically about the same amount of money. To come to San Diego, that means they take a 13% hit on their pay, because that's what the state income tax is here. Florida, you don't pay that. Arizona, you don't pay that. Texas, you don't pay that. Many of these young people are saying, I need that money to buy a house, and the housing prices are much cheaper. So that's one of the things that we're working on, educating our legislators, that every time you create a new regulation, every time you create something new, by itself it may not mean much, but when you get up about this high in the number of bills that you're producing, you start getting to that tipping point where business says, we're not staying here. The other part of that is about 144,000 people in California pay 80% of the income tax. Well, we're down to 140,000 now. 4,000 have left the state. Now, that doesn't mean they're not living here anymore, but they've established residence somewhere else. So we really need to look at the unintended consequences of what comes up when we do that, because each time you lose one of them, then they're in danger of taking their company and moving it somewhere else, and they're starting to do those economic analysis. So what we're looking at right now is especially working together on all those issues, making sure we have a unified jobs voice. Growing jobs is really what this is about. It's creating jobs for each of the families in San Diego. One of the things that I've gone out and talked about is the fact that we have 90,000 small businesses in San Diego. About 90% of our businesses are small business. That's 50 or fewer employees. If every one of them grew by one, if every one of them could hire one new employee because the environment allowed that or the competition allowed that, we'd see huge gains in jobs in this region. And those are the types of things we need to start thinking about, is how we grow it one job at a time in each of these small businesses, because that's really where you start to see the growth spurts in the economy. So I think that's really a central theme that we're looking at between those three organizations. You throw in biotech, huge numbers here. I was at their opening. They have their big biotech conference here this week, and went to the opening last night. We seem to think San Francisco beats us in everything. They have a tiny number of biotechs compared to San Diego. And the San Diego region has grown exponentially because of the 82 research institutions we have in San Diego, led by Salk and Scripps, Sanford, Burnham, all of those which are spinning out unbelievable numbers of new discoveries that creates new jobs and new enterprises all the time. So it's an exciting time for San Diego. But one of the things that we do have to learn more about is the export economy. We're very good at supporting our own economy here. We're good at drawing tourism. We're good at military and all that. But San Diego, with about the 17th largest number of people, the metro area, is about 55th in the export economy. And we're working with EDC, who's taken the lead on this, with Brookings Institute, and we're part of their global exportation strategy sessions, and that's one of the things that we'll be working on, is to figure out how to better export. But I think that's where Christina's project comes in. We know that if we can grow what happens in Tijuana and Mexicali, that creates many more jobs on the U.S. side, and that means, once again, and I'll take her number, for every dollar of import that comes in, 40% of that or 40 cents of that was actually exported to Mexico, so they could put it in their product and send it back. So that creates jobs in and of itself. It also means that the people in Tijuana, the middle class, are coming over and shopping more frequently, and that puts the money right back and the jobs right back into the economy in San Diego. So we see this all as intertwined. We see this as one economic region. And the Chamber's very excited about the opportunities to work on the border infrastructure, to work on tourism, and to work with our partners on the other parts of the economy, because we've got a region that has really adapted. If you think back to the 90s when it was aerospace and defense and that was it, this region has grown tremendously with biotech and high tech. UCSD, San Diego State, Point Loma, SPAWAR, the military's research institution, the Navy, the premier naval research institution in the world. We get things out of that nobody else can dream of. Cybersecurity is a hub in San Diego. So we really have opportunities, but we have to make sure that we're letting the people who can stop those opportunities know that they don't come. You can't take it for granted they're going to come here just because we're San Diego or just because we're California. We have to be competitive with everyone else. So with that, I'll stop.
I just want to make, thank you. You said the three organizations work together. Connect was about the innovation economy, about the creation of new things.
Right.
EDC was about getting businesses to come in, to bring them to our region.
Right, and they're also working on the military, on the BRAC process, on the sequestration issues.
Tell them what BRAC is.
BRAC is a base realignment process where it went on several years ago, where most communities lost military facilities because it permanently closes them. San Diego actually gained many more facilities and many more ships and many more research facilities. So we want to make sure we protect what we have and bring more here if that comes about. And then they also work on the sequestration issue.
And the chamber's job is about job creation.
No, job creation is really, it's really all of us.
Okay, but your
But
focus
the
is
chamber is tourism
tourism, right?
and it's border infrastructure.
Okay. Questions? Michael?
You know, what I always want to have an answer to is, as far as taxation goes, everybody talks about highest taxation in the country and stuff like that. But, you know, for both of you, it's, you still have roads, police, fire, water. You have all these things that government services are supposed to supply. Where does that come from if it's not through taxation, right? So it's the certain kinds of taxes might be higher or lower, but generally speaking, our taxes are 8th highest in the country when you add all of them together. So there's plenty of studies that show that. And I don't know if it's a red herring or what it is, just people.
Well, I don't
like
think
to
it's a
say-
red herring. I mean, if it was a red herring when I went out to business, they wouldn't say we're building in Arizona.
Well, right, but so you've got the, there's a whole lot of things about this, but, you know, as far as regulation goes, the same thing. It's like, you can sit there and say, well, sequest is a huge burden for everybody, but how are we gonna balance, the quality of life, the
Well,
quality of air, the quality of
so-
water 100 years from
Yeah,
now?
and let me tell you what I think about that. I think there have to be defined processes that actually have a start and an end, and it actually has some reasonableness in the terms it takes to do things. And I don't think that's what we're seeing right now. And I think the governor understands that. And that's the reason we're seeing some efforts at CEQA, at least talking about CEQA reform. I think that lawsuits can't have an infinite period of time, which stops projects, because business is very sensitive to how long it takes to get something done, because it's their money invested. It's not the government's money that's being invested in that. If they think they can go to Arizona, and I'll just give you an example. I went out to a company that has manufacturing facilities in San Diego, and they do a certain type of battery. And they've been here for a long time. They're going to be expanding because they've got a worldwide market. And they said they wouldn't even consider California. They're building a facility in Arizona because Arizona came to them and said, we'll give you a tremendous price on the land. We'll have 6 weeks of the review, the environmental review. We'll get that done immediately. We'll expedite permits. And we'll sell you your energy at literally a fifth of the cost of what it's going to cost you in San Diego. So, I mean, those are the types of things. So we're not going to lose them as their headquarters. I mean, a CEO's not crazy. He wants to live here, but they're going to grow their business outside, and those jobs will not be here. And I've heard that over and over again.
But that's the attraction thing, and it's not, you know, it's not gardening, it's not growing companies from within, creating an environment where small companies can become larger companies. So there's things like housing to address, you know.
But you know, all those are governed by the same regulation law. So I think, you know.
Well, getting an apartment from $2,000 a month to $1,400 a month. So a graduate from San Diego State or a bunch of roommates from San Diego State would stay here in Southern California or in San Diego instead of moving.
I understand, but the load on building that housing and the time it takes to get the permitting and the time it takes to get the permits of all the different things that you do are what drives up the cost in California. That's the issue. It's not necessarily how much it costs. The raw materials are going to cost the same no matter where you're at.
The land is
But it really revolves around the fact that if it takes you 3 years to do it instead of 1 year, and you still got to pay that load during that time, you know, these guys aren't going to give it back to people.
Right.
So I think it's a complicated issue, but the legislators have to start, and I'm not talking about one party or another. I'm simply saying that when you overlay so many regulations on it, that pretty soon people say, I'm going over here to expand. So Gavin Newsom came in the other day. He was in San Diego, stopped by, just wanted to chat. He understands job creation. He has business. And what he has said is, what the state hangs its hat on is that they're not seeing an outflow business headquarters out of here. He said what they don't measure is the manufacturing facilities, the call centers, and all the jobs that are not being grown here. So it's not an honest report in that way. And, you know, I think we're going to reach a tipping point. I don't think anyone wants to get there. And I think that we're seeing finally both sides coming together on this and starting to realize we've got to work to at least give some definiteness to these processes. I think that's what people look for more than anything else.
And I had
Mark?
to compliment you on being former President Clinton's favorite mayor. I mentioned that to you before, but on all the jobs that you created working with Irwin Jacob in software manufacturing and development in San Diego. I also wanted to get back to the cross-border question, because I know it's a complex one and not sure where we are. So do you have any updates or thoughts on that?
Well, you know, I think that the strategy is not the same strategy we've always had. So Chamber goes back and talks to the San Diego delegation. Everybody goes back and talks to the San Diego delegation. Well, the San Diego delegation, one of them lives around the corner from my house. I can talk to her any day I want. They're not the ones we need to convince. We need to convince Iowa. We need to convince Pennsylvania. We need to convince those 27 states who Mexico is the first, second, or third largest trading partner. So at the EDC dinner the other night, there was a congressional member from Philadelphia, from Pennsylvania, who's on the Border Infrastructure Committee, and he actually came out to see what the border infrastructure looked like. And I got a chance to talk to him that night. He said nobody in DC understands what I saw today. They did not see the massive traffic jams. They didn't see the massive mess that's down there. They don't realize that they haven't funded this whole thing, and they don't realize the opportunity loss that there is right now in that border. And he's the head of that one committee that actually is going to help us in terms of getting the budget to do that. So it's the appropriations in the president's budget. It's our job to go back to DC now and not talk to the California delegation, but instead talk to Iowa and Kentucky and Tennessee and New York and New Jersey, who have huge trading relationships with Mexico because the goods flow right through here. So that's what we'll be doing. The presidential permits have been issued for OTAI 2 and for the cross-border airport facility. Cross-border airport facility, my understanding is there may be a groundbreaking at the end of the year to allow people in San Diego to fly, or on the U.S. side, park on the U.S. side, ticket on the U.S. side, probably check your luggage on the U.S. side, walk across a bridge to Rodriguez Field and take flights to Asia, take flights to Latin America and all over Mexico.
Could you explain, you say OTAI Mesa 2, how important that is on the trucking
OTAI
side?
Mesa 2 is tremendously important. That's one that Sandag's pushing forward along with all of us. We worked at Sandag on that for a long time. It'll be a toll facility. You've got to pay to use it, but it'll be a commercial crossing first. They're polling to see what the toll should be on both sides of the border right now, and it'd be one combined toll most likely. And that would allow for that crossing not only to build the facility so we don't have to depend on Washington to do that, but secondly, it would also allow us to pay for the customs and border agents to actually get people through there. They're talking about a 15 to 20 minute wait time instead of 4 to 6 to 8 hours that's going on right now, where we're seeing the environmental issues, where we're seeing the toll and commercial crossings, and I don't think we're all that far away from that. Sandag estimates by the end of the year probably they'll have enough information to see if it can be bonded out and we can actually do it.
Thank you.
I couldn't agree with you more about the need for streamlining the regulations and this nightmare that we have in the term of CEQA and all the other regulations that burden businesses and anyone who lives in California. But I wanted to follow up with the tax issue in that I think it's kind of oversimplified that California has the highest tax rates, because they absolutely do not have the highest tax rate when it comes to property tax. And I'm wondering if you would be willing to engage in a dialogue or explore the possibility of exchanging, get rid of income tax in exchange for adjusting our property taxes. For example.
You're going to Texas now, Alan.
Yeah, I think that's why we didn't have a mass exodus to Texas. Texas has no state income tax along with 7 or other state taxes.
Let me be very honest with you. After having been a politician for 7 years, first of all, never having been one before, and then plunged into politics, that discussion will never take place. It simply will never take place. In Sacramento, there are 2 parties that are there. There's not much middle ground anymore, and a discussion like that takes middle ground. And there have been tax proposal after tax proposal after tax proposal after studies have been done showing how you could more fairly tax everybody so that it would work out, so that jobs can be created. That never goes anywhere because it requires 2 parties to work together, and you're not going to see it. And I'm just telling you from my position, you have to have people who are willing to work on those issues, and there seems to be no willingness whatsoever right now to do that. I talked to one of our state legislators the other day, and I said, how do we get to the moderate middle so we can talk to both sides on these issues? And he said, there is no moderate middle. There are moderates on both sides, but they're not allowed to be in the middle because neither side has the heft to allow it. So if you're a Democrat and you have a supermajority, your leadership's not letting you divert from that. And if you're a Republican and you're one of 25, they're not letting you move off of that. And there's nobody willing to meet in the middle because you can't get to 41 on either side unless it's one side doing it. So I've never been more discouraged in my life than I am watching state government right now. It disturbs me to no end because nobody's willing to work together on these issues that I can see.
Yeah, because I was hoping we could say, you say Sacramento's the biggest threat, that it could also, if we could somehow turn that around, it would be the biggest opportunity. But
well, one of you need to run for governor.
Well, Mike,
You pretty much answered my question because it's a political gridlock. But then, of course, I've been with Jeannie for a long time, and so we've gone through that a couple of times. What's the possibility, and Kali Baha might be able to answer this as well, what's the possibility of establishing a free trade zone between these 2 economic powerhouses so that we minimize these weights?
I have to be honest with you, I'm not smart enough to answer that.
Okay.
I've had it suggested a lot of times. We at one point had talked about a small free trade zone, where the Americas is down there, the plaza where you do the duty-free shop, or the cheap shopping and all that. We had suggested, some developers had talked about a free zone where people from both sides could shop there, and the customs and all that was on the other sides of each. But I'm just not smart enough to talk about that.
Do you
Christina, did you want to speak to that at all, or?
I'll speak. I don't know it in depth, but what I do know, there have been a number of ideas out there, and you've probably heard them longer than I have, and that is of a special economic zone, and they're proposing that for the Mexican side. And, we already have NAFTA, which no one is supposed to use that term, NAFTA, but, there are opportunity costs. There are certainly challenges to NAFTA, but it's been a huge benefit.
Yes.
Particularly now, as the dust really isn't settling on globalization, and as we come out of this recovery, and we see what's happening with the large trading blocks around the world, whether it's Europe or Asia, we're sitting right here in the middle of one of the most important ones, and that's North America. Mexico, United States, and Canada. And we have a special relationship. It can be improved, but having 3 different currencies is actually makes us the most competitive of just about any place else. Look at the problems in Europe. By having a fixed currency, it's created all kinds of problems. So expanding foreign trade zones, can it help some industry? Creating a special zone, that's more for Mexico, their own internal, kind of eliminating kind of some of the final taxes and kind of other kinds of regulations. So
There are a lot, it's a complex
Yeah.
issue, obviously, and it took a long time to create NAFTA, but I was from Canada when NAFTA was established, and so I had to bring that into the conversation because we are a border zone.
Yeah.
Thanks.
But you're saying the three different currencies has enabled us to manage our fiscal policy differently because Europe can't do it as well now because they're on a common currency? Is that what I understood you saying?
Well, I mean, okay, so
Somewhat.
Europe never put into place the kind of mechanism to politically address those kinds of problems. Whereas we have these three different floating currencies. So if you're a company, I mean, taking it from a company's perspective, it allows you a huge benefit as well to take advantage of different elements. Since we are part of NAFTA.
And if you look at Europe, I mean, the euro is worth the same in the US dollar no matter where you're at. Now, if you're in a very depressed economy and your euro's way up there, you're finding you don't have the buying power, and you're finding tourists aren't coming, and you're finding that you can't purchase the same, or people can't purchase your products, where if it floats at different rates in different countries, you can adjust your currency to actually match your economic condition.
Got it. All right. Very nice, thank you. Other questions? Patrick?
Hey folks, thank you very much for your presentations, both very interesting. I'd be curious as to your early thoughts on Mayor Filner's concept of making a proposal for the 2024 Binational Olympics. What are your thoughts?
Heck, it would bring lots of attention. It's actually an idea that's not new. When I got started at the EDC and working on Cali Baja, I was told then that Malin Burnham was part of a group who a number of years ago was very active. So, it would be great. Get a lot of infrastructure built out of it.
And I think Bob's feeling on it, having talked to him about it, is that he feels it's a win-win. Either you get it, which I don't think is very realistic, and I don't know that he does either, but or you work with the two regions together much more closely, and in that process, you figure out how to handle a lot of the issues. So I don't see a big downside to it as long as a lot of money's not spent on it. Some of these Olympic bids, though, are tremendously costly, and that's going to have to be raised somewhere. So I think the concept is really good, and we'll see how it plays out.
Did I hear, somebody's told me $100 million to make a bid? Is that,
It's
Mr.
pretty
Congress
expensive.
spent
It's
100
pretty
million.
expensive.
Yeah.
and that's private money, right? That's, I would imagine.
I've tried to raise a lot of money, and $100 million is a lot of money to raise. You don't call Qualcomm and say, can we borrow $100 million to make this bid?
Right.
We're more frugal than that.
Okay, who else? Please,
I have a question. I am.
can you speak a little louder?
I am an economist and small business owner here in town, and last time I went to the port of San Diego and take a look at it, and I was wondering, there's so much opportunity, at the port of San Diego, and what are the San Diego doing, like, trying to squeeze money out of the port of San Diego? Like, do you guys ever?
Could you repeat it a little bit because you were very soft?
I think I got it.
Okay, but I don't think everybody heard.
Well, he's asking about the Port of San Diego, and it seems to be underutilized, and what are we doing to squeeze more money out of it? I think that's been a question for a long time. I think we're seeing more trade agreements that are being created. I think the port's working a lot harder on it. But the other part of the port that's important, and I think this is usually missed in the conversation, there's one group who wants to turn it into hotels and a stadium and a lot of other stuff, which would be an economic driver. The problem with that is, though, the Port of San Diego, and you're talking about the 10th Avenue Terminal, I assume, where most of the commerce comes in and all of that, that's really important for a couple gigantic reasons. Number one, that is the buffer between the tourism industry and the shipbuilding industry. So you don't have a NASCO down there if you have hotels on the 10th Avenue Terminal, because what happens is, as soon as you put a hotel there, then the people in the hotel are saying, Jesus, it's noisy. It's got 24 hours a day around here. You've got cranes over there. They're dropping metal. They're banging. They're doing. that's really one of the biggest issues, is you have to have that buffer. The Navy has said they would start exploring other ports to diversify, because that's their buffer. That's also the roll-in, roll-out capability strategically for the Marine Corps. So when they're deploying and they're getting on some of the ships, that is where they do that. So that the port is really working actively to bring more commerce into that. We're not a container port, and we're not apt to be one anytime soon. But there's other things that can be done with it, and I think the port's working really hard on that.
Yes?
I think the industrial economy has lived because of the stated reasons, whether it's taxation or room for growth. But there are emerging new business formats. For example, the brewery industry is making a big.
Why'd you point to me?
I've seen you few times. I know you know that industry. Plus the farm-to-table industry, the green energy industry is making coming up to be a dominant force. What kind of programs or outreach does either of your organizations?
Well, when you were mayor, my organization, the EDC, did a number of mayoral roundtables to kind of connect these different industries with City Hall, with the mayor. So he would get to learn more about them, and they would have access to him, and you went around and saw these different places. So, I mean, we see this as something very important to kind of really identify these up-and-coming industries.
So the brewing industry, I mean, it's exploded, literally.
Yeah.
I think that there were probably 12 breweries around, and there are about 66 right now. There are about 36 applications, new applications coming in. Now, everybody laughs about that, but it has the highest job multiplier of any industry in San Diego. So for each new job in a brewery, it creates 5.2 new jobs out in the rest of San Diego. So where I talked about 2.5 jobs created in the innovation economy and the traded economies, it's 5.2 in the brewing industry, just because of the way it is and how they do the work. So, you know, that's actually a pretty important one, and it actually draws a lot of tourists to San Diego. You'll find a lot of brew tours coming from LA every single weekend, coming from all over the coast. Clean tech was a huge thing. We partnered with EDC on from a city perspective, and you've seen really explosive growth in that. And the analytics that I told you about were the hub for that. I would have never known that had not EDC brought down a group of people involved in analytics and big data. And they're the ones who put all the statistics together, and this is really one of the largest hubs. It is the largest hub probably in the world of that type of data. So we're finding new emerging industries, clusters like that, and once they start growing, you find others coming around. Sports equipment. San Diego's got a huge industry in that, and that's applied sciences. It's all the new synthetic materials. It's the the different engineering that goes into creating a different golf shaft and a different golf head, and skateboards of all things, and surfboards and all of that. So we see those all the time, and those are things that we really encourage to grow by working with them industry by industry so that they can actually grow and thrive.
But that's still not manufacturing of it, it's design and.
It's mostly design and all of that. And as I said, most of the manufacturers do also. Now, I'll give you a different example, though. Went out to Taylor Guitar the other day. It's out in El Cajon, most amazing place I've ever been into. They produce the highest end guitars in the world, and they literally had pallets about this size and about this tall, just of this one thing right here, with $1 million worth of lumber on them. They use sustainable timber practices where they will go to different countries around the world, and they'll only take one tree. And they pick out the tree, and then they have the natives harvest it, whatever village, whatever country, and they only take out one, and they may have that pallet of lumber for that one very rare wood, where they'll make 20 guitars a year, and they may have that for 20 years because they're so careful about that. But they produce a lot of guitars, but they produce very high-end things. So when the state of California came up with a lot of the air quality things, Bob Taylor, instead of complaining, said, let me hire scientists to figure out how to do this, created robots that actually do that, enclosed things to do the painting and the misting and the sanding and all those repetitive things. And then instead of keeping it as a proprietary secret, he actually has invited Fender and all these other guitar manufacturers in, because he feels very strongly if one bad guitar goes out, it doesn't matter who makes it, it hurts the whole industry. So, I mean, we still see places like that, but they're few and far between.
But how do you nurture that type of?
Well, I think that, I didn't meet him the other day, but I have to tell you, there are 350 employees out there that they're craftsmen, and he nurtures them. Each guitar goes out with his seal of approval, and they have check after check after check on the quality of that, and nothing goes out of there without that. I think that that's really a homegrown story that's absolutely incredible when you think
So
about it.
getting back to the, Arizona, just letting down, giving away the whole store to get companies, luring companies out there, they're gonna end up being like Tijuana. If you wanna live in a
No, I don't think that,
environment
I don't
doesn't
think
have
that's the case at all,
regulations.
and they don't reduce the standards on that, but they have a finite process. And finiteness, when you're trying to create jobs, is one of the most important things. And it's not just Arizona, I mean, Florida's the same way, Texas is the same way. Tennessee is attracting a lot of business right now, so, I think that they have figured out a way to do it that generates the jobs, which generates the economy and the tax revenue.
Well, I mean, that's the thing that's crazy about it. So there's plenty of case studies that talk about, luring Motorola from Lisle, Illinois to Libertyville, or something. You're just transferring it 50 miles, and you're going to, give the company $125 million.
Well,
to
but,
stay.
see, you're talking the same state at that point, it makes no sense on that.
Well, I mean,
But it talks about if you're gonna lose them from the state of California and our tax base, that makes me angry, because that means my taxes are gonna go up to make up that difference. So I think we have to think about unintended consequences of all of these. And there can be business concessions made that don't give away the whole store, an enterprise zone type thing, where you're given tax credits for hiring from disadvantaged zip codes. Makes all the sense in the world. That's what got Soitec into San Diego, because we worked with them on that issue.
So is Chamber, I know, is a member organization, is EDC a member organization as well?
Yes.
All right, I don't know how many of you are members, but could you make your 30-second, 1-minute pitch on why you should be a member of the
Yeah,
Chamber, why you should be a member of EDC?
I think, I'll just give for the chamber. I
Yeah.
mean, we have 3,000 businesses that we represent, from the very large to the very small. Most of our businesses are small business. We give classes in just about everything you can give a class in to help a small business owner, from presentation skills to doing a 30-minute commercial, to how to go to a mixer and go to get into business with other people, to putting our big businesses like Qualcomm, SDG&E, and all of them out and telling the small businesses how they can get contracts with them. So the Chamber represents all of that through policy and also working at educating legislators.
Okay, great. Membership of EDC?
EDC is much smaller. I think we have around 130, 140 company, and we call them investors. They're members, they're investors. We have a very different setup from the chamber in that sense. It tends to be the larger companies. It's not, most of the, in fact, virtually all of the companies that are investors are already made it. And so it's more about working, they become engaged because they want to help address a lot of the issues that are important to them to be competitive. And so they find it's one of the, in addition to almost all of them are members of the chamber, it's a place for them to become more engaged at a different level on these kinds of issues.
I'm going to have to wrap up. Would you thank both our guest speakers here tonight, Jerry and Christina? They were fabulous, yes? One commercial for us. Next week we have a terrific evening for our Geodesign San Diego event on Wednesday. You can see it on our calendar. We're having Matt Perry and Aaron Steckelberg. You've seen their work at the San Diego UT when they do graphic visualization, data visualization. Look at those little names at the bottom. These are the premier data viz, visual graphic guys in our town, and they'll be here next Wednesday night to show you their work, tell you how it is. It's about layered maps using infographics to tell a story. We're honored to have them next week as well, so join us if you can. Thank you both. Pleasure to have you here. Jared, thank you. Thank you, Mr.